In the vast galactic capital of Serenexus Prime, where species with photonic lungs, crystalline intellects, and atmospheres so pure they considered air itself sacred, humanity had always been tolerated, barely. Their physical resilience, creativity, and unnerving adaptability made them both useful and terrifying. But mostly they were mocked. Quietly, of course. Very politely. Because humanity, ever diplomatic, ever self-restrained, had never given the Galactic Council reason to fear them. Not really. After all, humanity had always worn its polite mode like a badge. It was the label used in council circles to describe the baffling, consistent human tendency to negotiate, smile, and de-escalate, even when insulted, deceived, or maneuvered into unfavorable positions. They de-escalate like it's an art form, one Zalvar senator had once famously said. And they never bite unless cornered. As long as they're still smiling, you're fine. The humans had smiled for 200 years. Ambassador Talia Ward stood in the shimmering atrium of the High Council chambers, her black diplomatic robes reflecting the golden light that filtered down from the towering stained glass skylight. Her posture was relaxed, every movement calm and calculated. She was the epitome of human diplomacy, restrained, courteous, measured. Behind her, towering in size and complexity, sat the assembled might of the Galactic High Council, hundreds of delegates in their conical hover thrones, arranged in a staggered spiral above the grand floor. Lights blinked across their alien interfaces, scent communicators puffed like incense, telepathic pulses danced like invisible static. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Humanity, boomed High Speaker Voriske, a serpentine diplomat of the Orvani spiral-born. His body shimmered with psychic heat. You have violated Trade Accord 812. Unauthorized expansion into neutral zones. You know this cannot stand. Talia's expression remained placid. With respect, High Speaker, the term neutral zone does not preclude humanitarian action. The colony on Trisis V was failing. We provided life support, food, infrastructure. Nothing militarized. A low chuckle, grinding and wet, rolled from the fungal ambassador of the Blorth. And yet your supply ships carried railgun arrays and orbital defense satellites. Talia didn't blink. The region is pirate-prone. We take civilian protection seriously. Counselor Zurich-men of the telepathic Concord shimmered blue in irritation. Protection is one thing. Establishing planetary governance without clearance is another. Talia offered a graceful bow of the head. The humans will, as always, submit to council review. However, we will not abandon those people. There it was again, the tone. Calm. Assertive. But not aggressive. That infuriating human habit of standing their ground without ever once raising their voice. They were impossible to provoke. Across the chamber, hidden inside galleries, aides and strategists from countless species whispered or vibrated or clicked. The humans had once again avoided a full breach by towing the line so delicately it was practically art. And that's what made today so peculiar. Because for the first time in decades, humanity hadn't just brought a diplomat. They'd brought a strategic oversight officer. Seated a respectful distance behind Talia Ward, in a formal black uniform, was Commander Ian Holt. He said nothing. Did nothing. Just sat. Watching. That alone was enough to raise quiet murmurs. The council knew of Holt. Every government in the galaxy did. He wasn't just a soldier. He was one of the very few humans labeled anomaly grade by the Seraphic Index, meaning he possessed an intellect, tactical history, and reaction profile that didn't statistically align with baseline species behavior. Holt had commanded the Saturn reprisal during the Krell incursion. He had broken the siege of Dalis IV. His presence here in a council negotiation was a message, but no one could figure out what kind. Talia turned just slightly and said over her shoulder, "Commander Holt, if you would share the incident data packet from the Trisis V event." Holt stood slowly. His movement was precise, not intimidating, yet the room seemed to lean away from him. He walked to the center projection dais, inserted a slim crystalline drive into the interface, and said only 3 words. Playback. Full transparency. The holographic field flared to life, filling the chamber with a 360-degree immersive display of the Trisis V incident. Real footage. Audio, heat signatures, tactical overlays. It started with human ships dropping supplies, building water systems. Children playing under security drone nets. Medical volunteers assisting multi-limbed, multi-species colonists. All noble, all peaceful. Until the attack. A swarm of pirate ships, Zaurith design, black market modified, descended like locusts. They fired indiscriminately into civilian structures, took hostages, transmitted grotesque threats. The footage cut to the humans' response, a shield. A purely defensive net. No retaliation. Until one of the pirates shot a human aid worker in the back as she shielded a child. The audio froze. The entire chamber could hear the gasp from onlookers in the gallery. And then Holt played what came next. Talia Ward's voice whispered as if from a ghost. Disengage polite mode. And in the next 2 minutes, the pirate fleet ceased to exist. No formal weapons exchange. No warnings. No retreat. The ships were reduced to high-velocity molecular dust in a coordinated, precise orbital strike that left civilian structures untouched. The feed showed human command consoles switching from diplomatic override to strategic free response in milliseconds. The room was silent. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. That was what humans had been holding back. Counselor Voriske hissed, low and long. You destroyed them. Without protocol. Without trial. Talia Ward responded, her smile perfectly level. They declared their own protocol when they murdered civilians. We simply responded in kind. You did more than respond, barked a crystalline entity from the Threx Consortium. That was annihilation. Now it was Commander Holt who spoke, quiet even, but with a gravity that dropped like a weapon. Incorrect. That was restraint. Talia glanced at him, then turned to the chamber. For centuries, she said, humanity has respected this council. We've accepted every slander, every suspicion, every maneuver against us. We've compromised. We've adjusted. We've diplomed. The room shifted uncomfortably. The word wasn't official, but everyone knew what she meant. Talia's voice dropped. But somewhere along the way this chamber mistook our politeness for incapacity. You assumed that because we stayed soft we couldn't go hard. That because we smiled we couldn't bare our teeth. That assumption ends today. The lights dimmed. Another file queued. It was the full activation log of what the humans called Protocol Switch 1A. A global directive used only in wartime emergencies. Its name, Polite Mode, OFF. Holt looked up, his eyes unreadable. We've come to remind the galaxy what the other mode looks like. The file finished playing. Silence swallowed the chamber. No translation streams hummed. No send emitters pulsed. No neurofrequency relays ticked. The council chamber, normally a theater of competing intellects and egos, was still. Commander Holt stepped away from the dais. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't have to. The message had landed with the force of an orbital kinetic rod. And Talia Ward hadn't moved. She stood there with her hands loosely clasped behind her back, the perfect picture of diplomatic grace. Yet even the dullest observer could see it now, the shift. The tension in her shoulders had eased. The gentle softness in her tone had cooled. Polite mode really was off. High speaker Voriske coiled higher into the air, uncoiling neck vertebrae in frustration. His words came sharp and accusatory. This is a threat then? An ultimatum? You sit before the united governments of 600 species and declare open aggression. Talia's eyes didn't even flicker. No. We are reminding you of reality. The aggression already exists. You just haven't been calling it by name. A spike of bright pink emitted from Counselor Relvin, a floating cloud of gaseous particles formed from magnetized dust. An alarm burst in her species. You're implying the council has been complicit? Holt answered this time. Let's review. He tapped the projector once. Instantly the chamber filled with frames, dozens of conflicts, skirmishes, coincidental disasters. Mining disputes where human claims were ignored. Patrols redirected into ambush zones. Trade tariffs doubled with no justification. Medical ships raided by unknown parties with council-grade stealth tech. Each one accompanied by a human response. Each response had been calm, composed, diplomatic. Each response had been received as weakness. You call it diplomacy, Holt said flatly, but it's been bleeding us. Counselor Zurichman, the telepathic Concord member, exhaled psionic waves of unease. We never authorized hostile action. No, Talia said coolly. But you also never stopped it. Because you believed we wouldn't escalate. Another counselor, Lord Kinraxis of the Glimmerfold, clacked their mandibles. So what, now you do away with diplomacy altogether? You burn the protocols that have kept this galaxy from tearing itself apart. Talia tilted her head. No. We keep the protocols. But now we enforce them. That's the difference. Raxus sputtered in alien static. And then Talia dropped the next bomb. Humanity has activated Directive 1A across its colonies, protectorates, and allied systems. Strategic silence has ended. Diplomatic immunity is conditional. Any future hostilities, overt or covert, will be answered. Holt stepped forward again. With escalation. The word sat in the room like a live explosive. Most of the council had never seen humans escalate. Not really. Not without a leash. Not without moral debates and bureaucratic chains slowing them down. But every species knew the stories. The early wars. The siege of Earth. The battle of the Fathom Wall. How humans survived being outgunned, outnumbered, and biologically outmatched. By thinking like no other species did. By fighting like they had nothing left to lose. Polite mode, Holt said, was a choice. Not a flaw. Counselor Voreske tried again. You don't understand the consequences of such a stance. Oh, we do, Talia said, stepping closer now. Her voice was like cold steel wrapped in velvet. You misunderstand our restraint for innocence. But we are not innocent. We've simply been considerate. The final word was spoken like a knife sliding through silk. And then the feeds around the chamber began to light up with alerts. What? Real time. The chamber screens flickered, unbidden, with transmissions from border sectors. Dozens of them. Human fleets appearing from behind gas giants. Ground forces deploying not into enemy territory, but in defense of allied regions that had requested help for decades, and been ignored. Messages from trade zones where corrupt merchant guilds had been forcibly removed, their exploitation networks dissolved by precision strikes. Zero collateral damage. Every target had been legal. Every action within precedent. But they were all bold. They were human. And not a single operation had been sanctioned by the Council. Your fleets, hissed the fungal delegate of the Blorth, you've mobilized without permission. No, Holt said. We've mobilized without waiting. 2 centuries of order, Zurich men started. Built on our silence, Talia cut in. On our tolerance. On our willingness to smile while you spat in our faces. The last screen on the wall showed a live feed of a human battlecruiser in high orbit over the Council-neutral world of Harent. That ship had not fired a shot. But it didn't need to. It simply hung there like a guillotine. And its transponder pinged an ID that made every species in the room wince. You're just Cassandra. The ship that ended the Krell War in 11 hours. The sledgehammer behind every velvet glove humanity had ever worn. The signal blinked once. Polite mode, off. The high speaker tried again, this time gentler. You must see how this escalates things unnecessarily. The other species will panic. You're forcing them into a corner. No, Talia said, quiet again. We're showing them the walls they helped build. And how thin those walls really are. Holt watched the monitors, his tone unreadable. The only ones panicking are those who relied on our silence to thrive. A different voice spoke up. A surprising one. Counselor Ilani of the Altari Drift, long a neutral party and historically anti-human, floated forward in her gravity harness. Her crystalline tones rang clear. What happens now? Talia looked up at her. And finally she smiled. But this time, it wasn't the gentle, tired smile of a diplomat holding the piece together by fingernails. It was the calm, terrifying smile of someone done being underestimated. Now, she said, you take us seriously. You could almost hear it, the collective recalibration of 1,000 assumptions. The chamber, so often filled with interstellar bluster and bureaucratic ritual, now churned with a different kind of current, fear. But not the mindless kind. This was the intelligent fear of a council suddenly aware that it had misread the temperature of the room for 2 centuries. And now it was boiling. Talia Ward stepped back from the center of the chamber, but her presence didn't diminish. In fact, it grew, expanded beyond her body like a pressure front. Her hands remained calmly folded in front of her, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. Watchful. No longer asking for agreement. Simply announcing consequences. Commander Holt hadn't moved. Still as stone, but in the chamber's psychic bandwidth, he was the dark star drawing all attention toward himself. Counselor Zurich men pulsed a flicker of mental static into the diplomatic ether. An unspoken question received by the minds of a dozen psychic-capable races. How far will they go? Talia heard the whisper. It was meant to be heard. She answered aloud. As far as they have to. The statement was a seismic line drawn in diplomatic bedrock. Counselor Raxus, mandibles twitching with nervous irritation, let out a vibrating hiss. You're abandoning collective unity for your own sense of justice. No, Talia corrected, her tone smooth but unyielding. We're correcting collective unity because it was never equitable. We chose diplomacy. But the moment it became an excuse to sideline us, to sabotage us, to contain us, We stopped choosing. The Blorth delegate oozed out another protest, fungal membranes quivering. And what of our agreements? Our accords? You mean the ones that bind us but not you? Holt finally spoke again, voice low and heavy. The ones you ignore when convenient, but expect us to follow religiously? He took a single step forward. Just one. The effect was nuclear. I want to be clear, Holt continued. We're not coming to conquer. We're not here to burn the table. But we are rebuilding it. With reinforced legs. And we're sitting at the head of it now. Talia spoke again, reclaiming center gravity. You wanted humanity tame. Predictable. Harmless. But we are none of those things. We are self-restrained. There's a difference. For the first time, Counselor Ilani did not meet Talia's gaze. The Altari were calculating beings. Always hedging. Always watching. And they were doing the math. The humans had not fired first. They had not broken the Council's core tenets. They had simply revealed that their restraint was not infinite. And across the stars, those who had mistaken that for weakness were now adjusting. On the periphery of the chamber, a sudden transmission request blinked through the walls. The Council's Grand Chamber rarely accepted interruptions, but this wasn't just any call. It was from UHS Cassandra. The room went dead silent as the message played. A woman's voice, rich and severe. This is Fleet Admiral Nara Kor of the Cassandra. Let the record show, humanity remains committed to peace. But we no longer accept the illusion of equality as its substitute. Any acts of aggression, subversion, or collusion against human systems will now be treated with strategic parity. Cassandra is armed. Our fleets are ready. And should it come to war, we will not wage it politely. The feed cut. The silence that followed was thunderous. Counselor Voriske leaned forward, forked tongue flickering. So that's it. You force the galaxy into fear and call it reform. No, Holt said. We tell the truth and let you fear the mirror. Behind him, a holographic display rotated, displaying dozens of past council resolutions that had favored non-human allies over identical human petitions. The bias was no longer subtle. It was archived. Talia gestured gently to the array. This isn't rebellion. This is exposure. You built a system with levers only you could pull. We're just showing the galaxy who's pulling them. Zirikmen pulsed again, his mind voice rippling like disturbed water. And if we adapt? If the council shifts to meet you honestly? Talia held his gaze. Then we do what we've always done, she said. We build. We trade. We explore. Together. But this time with equity. Ilani finally looked up again. And if we don't? Holt responded without hesitation. Then polite mode stays off. The chamber didn't shake. No thunderclaps. No war drums. Just silence. But in that silence, the balance of the galaxy tilted. You could see it even in the smallest things. The tiny shift in how council members turned their eyes toward the humans, not as tools or toys but as equals and perhaps more unsettlingly, as contenders. Talia glanced at Holt. He gave a nod, imperceptible to most. Their message was delivered. As they turned to leave the chamber, a few members tried to call out, to stall them with procedural objections. But it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a raised hand. The humans weren't storming out. They were walking out in control. The moment the massive chamber doors closed behind them, the council erupted in low, overlapping static. Dozens of private communication streams firing between species, allies, enemies, and observers. Plans were already shifting. Fear now measurable. Respect now enforced. And deep in the chamber archives, one of the observers, an archivist drone responsible for historical indexing, filed the meeting under a new classification. Polite _modern override 001. 3 hours after the humans left the Grand Chamber, the Council's emergency corps met in the war vaults beneath Spire Hecta. It was where species went to whisper about nightmares. And now humanity was the nightmare. 22 Council members sat in a room lined with adaptive alloy that neutralized all translation streams, suppressed emotion emissions, and sterilized any psychic noise. No records. No observers. Just power. Counselor Ilani broke the silence first. They were right. Gasps rippled. Some even glared. But the Altari's floating crystalline body turned slowly to face them all. We did exploit the illusion of balance. We let the treaties bind humanity tighter than others. Because we feared what they might become. You feared what they might reveal, added the Ralzan Kingcast representative. That we never had balance to begin with. You sound like sympathizers, growled Voriske. You saw the same fleets I did. You heard their threat. This is the rise of a militant empire under the banner of fairness. No, came a new voice. Everyone turned. The door opened. A figure stepped in, unannounced, unscheduled. Not a diplomat. Not even alien. It was Fleet Admiral Narakor. In person. 2 honor guards flanked her, not with weapons drawn, but with the quiet certainty of consequence. "You're not authorized to be here," barked one of the council's senior protocol ministers. "Funny," she said. "That's exactly what the Relhen Trade Syndicate told us when we seized their illegal fleet-building yards 2 hours ago. You invaded sovereign territory." She tilted her head. "No. We enforced your own Article 9C on unauthorized weapons escalation. We simply stopped waiting for you to do it." That shut the room up fast. Kor walked slowly toward the circular center of the vault. "We've seen your logs," she said. "We know how this place works. Hidden decisions. Secret strategies. Quiet shifts of power in the dark." Her eyes swept the room. "You built this system to keep power in orbit around yourselves." She paused, then added, "We are the gravity now." Counselor Raxus snapped, "You presume too much. Even if some of us agree the galaxy is not yours to command. You are one species. And you are many species pretending you aren't afraid of the same thing," Kor replied evenly. She raised a small device. No weapon, just a transmitter. She tapped it once. The hologram that emerged was not a war map. Was a treaty. A new one. Digital ink. Rewritten protocols. Provisions for mutual transparency. Rotating council leadership roles. Economic parity. Reformed arbitration courts. Rebuilt emergency aid infrastructure. Kor stepped aside as the projection rotated. "This," she said, "is what happens when polite mode shuts off. You don't get war. You get accountability. You get a galaxy that stops pretending the game isn't rigged." "And what if we refuse?" said the Jalari Ascendant with a sneer. "Then you keep pretending," she said. "Until pretending isn't enough." That was the real threat, and everyone in the room knew it. Not fire. Not domination. But clarity. A world where no one could manipulate humanity through red tape and noble-sounding excuses. A world where the consequences came not from anger, but from focus. Ilani spoke again. Her voice was softer this time. "You said something earlier. That restraint is not innocence. I think we all misunderstood." Kor nodded. "We chose diplomacy. Because we believed in it. But we will never again let it become a muzzle." She turned to leave. Then paused. "And by the way," she added, looking over her shoulder, "polite mode wasn't our strongest mode. It was just the one easiest to ignore." With that, she was gone. The council remained behind, simmering in the wake of something far more dangerous than anger. Conviction. Epilogue. 13 months later. The galaxy had changed. The treaties had passed, not without blood, not without noise, but they passed. Some empires collapsed under the weight of their own lies. Others thrived under new fairness. Human fleets remained ready, but they no longer had to prove anything. And the phrase polite mode took on an almost mythic weight. Children of alien species grew up with stories of the day the humans stopped smiling and started enforcing. Merchants told stories about how a single human patrol ship could shut down entire slaver networks, without ever firing a shot. And in one council-approved museum on the border world of Rallis, a recording played daily on a loop. Talia Ward's voice. "Humanity is not here to conquer. We're here to remember. And to make sure the galaxy does too." Underneath the plaque, written in hundreds of languages, was the phrase that had rewritten the balance of power across 600 species. Polite mode, off. Cyclone, if you enjoyed this story and want more like it, subscribe to the Void Narratives. We tell the kind of sci-fi that makes galaxies tremble and humans walk tall. Subscribe now. Stay loud. Stay human.